Alright, so in this one we're going to learn how to set up a TFF. So this here is a TFF, in the right frame, there you go. You can see on here there are two ends, and two red caps where water and gas can flow in and out of the outside of the filter. Okay, a TFF works like so. Liquid flows through from end through to the other end. Unless there is back pressure applied, water and liquid will continue to flow through without ever actually being filtered or concentrated. If you add back pressure, then liquid will pass through the filter, and you can see the filter is just sort of a bundle of, it seems like a bundle of reeds. And when you apply back pressure, it will force liquid through the filter and then out to the outside of the filter and then out one of these red cap ends. So water goes through, back pressure makes it go through the filter and out, which concentrates what's passing, the liquid passing through the filter, and gives you a filtrate that is very, very clean. This TFF is, I don't know if you can see it, is 100 kilodalton filter with a surface area of, a filter surface area of 1 meter squared. So within this TFF is a massive filtering area, which makes it very good for doing such fine scale filtration. Okay, so that's the TFF. You'll note that it's sealed at both ends so that water cannot leak out, and a good TFF is one that remains wet. If you see it dry, it's probably not in very good shape. At least when you hold it up, you should see liquid pool up to about this level here. Okay, without that, your TFF's not looking very good. You can also tell when you add back pressure to your TFF, if it doesn't want to have liquid flow to the outside of the TFF, it's not looking very good. Okay. This here is a peristaltic pump. Masterflex peristaltic pump. Okay. So this is the actual pump here. This is the pump head. The pump head gets attached to the pump itself using 3 long screws, bolts, screws, whichever, that come with it. You can also buy these at Home Depot. Alright. You'll see on here there are a lot of places where you can actually put a bolt into, but we actually use these 3 down here because there are 3 holes in the pump head. Okay. On the peristaltic, you'll see there's a slot. When the pump actually runs, I've plugged it in already. I'll turn it on at the back. See how it comes on. If I make this start pumping, I'll start at a really low speed so you can see in here, you can see how it's just a shaft that spins around. Okay. What then happens is that shaft locks into this little piece that sticks out on the side here and makes it turn around, around, around. That turning makes the inside of here also turn. And what happens is as it spins, it squeezes the tubing that's going to go through here up against the inside of this piece and creates a force, just squeezing and pushing liquid through. That's how peristaltic works. They're really good because no part of the pump actually touches your sample, which is nice so you don't get contamination, and also peristaltics will just pump and pump forever and ever and ever, and you don't have to worry about it. Okay. These things rarely die. Alright. So what we'll do first of all is, and the last thing to note about the pump head is this is an easy load peristaltic. You move this lever across, it opens up the chamber here, you just put your tubing in, and then once it's in, you just clamp it down. On top here is the capacity to tighten or loosen the chamber on your tubing. So if you're using very wide tubing, which is what we do, loosen this off all the way. If you're doing finer tubing, then you tighten it down. Okay. So what we'll do is we'll stick the head on, and we'll leave it clamped down so it's easier to handle. All you do is you put the bolt through and line it up with the first hole. What you also may have to do is line up the piece that sticks out of the pump head with the slot on the peristaltic itself so it will actually slide in. There we go. It's slotted in. Now I take the bolt, put it through, find the hole. There we go. Okay, so once I've got that, I put it in just a little bit, just to hold that point in position, and then I put the next one in. This one should be a lot easier to find because it's being lined up already by the slot here as well as the bottom bolt. And I'll screw this one in too. Alright, now, just holding it loosely with my right hand here, I'll just start snugging up some of these bolts with the screwdriver. We often have much shorter screwdrivers in our kits so that it's much easier to do this, especially on a moving ship. But for right now in the lab, tighten that up. Alright, and I'll just snug them up a little. There you go. You don't have to tighten these up a whole lot. Just make sure it's not hanging off loose. If you over tighten it, you may crack this plastic. Okay. So now it's on here. Do this, we can open it up. Okay, the next step is to put the tubing together. Alright, so what usually comes with your TFF are two lengths of very, very wide tube. Okay, so this is 82, I think. Okay, so one piece of tubing has a piece on it that goes to the end of the TFF here. These guys marry, as well as a pressure gauge. The other piece is just tubing with an end piece that goes with the TFF. The third piece, which often is a lot finer, is just a plain piece of tubing that attaches to one of the red cap nipples. Okay. So the way to do this is, what I do first is I connect the hosing with the pressure gauge on it. Now, what I have over here is a bucket that's representing my sample. It's just full of distilled water right now. You place one end in your sample. This is how it would go in the end. It would then, the tubing would run through the peristaltic pump, then your pressure gauge, then to the end of the TFF. Then the other piece of tubing would connect to the other end of the TFF and return to the bucket. Okay? That's how it works in schematic. So, first of all, what I do is I run my tubing through my peristaltic pump. I like to leave my pressure gauge sitting right next to the pump, right here. That way you have as much length going to the bucket as you can, so your sample can be further away from your pump if necessary. Then what we do is we undo the clamps on the ends of the peristaltic. Open it up. I like to keep all my pieces on top of my pump. Then at the end of the TFF here, you can see there's a cap and a ring, a clear sealing rubber ring. So leave that on there, take the white cap off. I also put that on top of the TFF, the peristaltic. Then what you do is you take the piece at the end of your tubing and marry it up to the end of the TFF, hold it in position, and then reattach the clamp. Alright, sometimes this gets fiddly. Okay, so now I've got that clamp down. I'm just going to tighten that up. Again, you don't have to like over tighten these things, just tighten it so it's finger tight. There we go. Now we have the system set up so it goes sample, tubing, goes through the peristaltic pump, pressure gauge into the TFF. Okay. Sorry, 1 second. Okay, that's much better. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach the other piece of tubing that is just the return line that takes liquid back into my sample or into a sink. I always do this next to a sink because you're going to want to drain either your sample as you're concentrating it into the sink, or you're going to want to drain what you're cleaning into the sink, so you're always going to end up getting rid of something down the sink. Alright, once again, placing the clear rubber ring back on here, attaching the cap again, and then reattaching this clamp. Oh, I should point out this particular clamp. This clamp is a very common type of clamp on our TFFs. It loops in like so, so you'll take it off and it will look like this. All you do to open it is you pull this little tab out from the lever part. Right? Then to redo it, you clip that back in and clamp it down. Okay, so let's place that on there, clamp it down, done. Okay, now what I like to do, I like to place it so that I have my two red nipples sticking up, and often I stand it on the clamps at each end so it's nice and stable. Making sure, nice and stable is kind of ironic. Okay, then what I want to do, obviously I have a clamp in my line, is I want to take this out like this. Okay, and resettle everything. Alright, so now everything's nice and stable. What you then want to do when you're setting up your TFF is you want to dry underneath it. Dry everywhere you can where liquid could come from, because if you have a leak in your TFF, you want to know about it as soon as possible. When you're first concentrating your sample and you lose some liquid, it's not a big deal. But once you've concentrated 60 liters down to 1 liter, if you lose 10 mils, you're losing a lot of equivalent volume of seawater. Okay, so make sure it's nice and dry under there so you can, as soon as possible, see any leaks that you may have. Okay. Then what we'll do is we'll take this one off because it's clearer for you. Take one of the nipples off and place tubing on it. In this case I just put this one in. Okay, and then run that down to the sink or wherever you want to collect your sample. Alright. Then the last thing is you want to be able to apply back pressure to this line, the return line that's going back into your sample or into the sink. Usually we have a clamp that we just add to that, and that then is your complete TFF setup. You've got the delivery line going from the sample, through the peristaltic, through the pressure gauge, into the TFF, and then the return line with a clamp on it if you want to apply back pressure, sending liquid back to the sink or back to your sample that you're concentrating. And then you also have a tube that is taking your filtrate and delivering it to wherever you want it to go. Okay, that is how you set up your peristaltic pump and your TFF for concentration for a metagenome. Usually, and also note, you turn the pump on and off from the back. Okay, and you can change the speed with the dial right here. So you just dial that up. Also note you can change the directionality, whether the peristaltic will pump liquid in that direction or in that direction by pressing this DIR button here, and then you turn the pump on or off using the start-stop button. Okay, when you're done, or when you're not using the peristaltic, make sure to release the easy load so that the tubing here is not being compressed for no reason. Okay, all right.